Hey y'all, it's Mary Hyatt, and I am so excited you're here for this month's topic, which is all about body connection. But before we hop into today's episode, I want you to know that this month we're going to be tackling an essential question. How important is the body really to helping you live fully alive? Well, I'm here to tell you that I personally think that this might just be the missing link you have been searching for, and you weren't even aware of it. This month, we're going to be exploring the crucial role the body plays in our physical, emotional, and spiritual healing from so many different angles. So without further ado, let's jump into it.
Welcome to the Living Fully Alive podcast with Mary Hyatt, here to help you find your authentic voice, learn how to love yourself, and embrace your life. And now, your host, life and mindset coach, body love advocate, and doTERRA Presidential Diamond, Mary Hyatt.
Everyone, it's Mary, and welcome to the final episode of this month's topic, which is centered all around body connection. Man, we have had such an incredible month of conversations around this connection, and I feel like we've kind of just scratched the surface. But since we've covered so much this month, I wanted to make sure that I left y'all with a practical episode, something that you can sink your teeth into, something where you can walk away having an idea of how to begin to implement the knowledge that you have received over the past other 3 episodes in this month and sort of get back into a daily practice of connecting with your body. And if you haven't listened to the past episodes of this month, definitely go back and listen to those because it really will create a foundation for today's conversation, which is sort of the final piece of the puzzle of, okay, how do we live a life where we are anchored into our bodies? So the first episode, we talked about the mind-body connection and how everything really originates in the body first. Our emotions and our thoughts are incredibly connected. And so I go through the 3 different bodies that we have and how to begin to connect to the unique language of our body. And then Lindsley, my part-time co-host on the second episode, we talked about embodiment. How do we actually get into the physical body and access our body's wisdom? We talked about how to find your body's yes and how to find your body's no, and really begin to use your body kind of as a navigational system for living your best life. And then we had Dr. Christopher Motley in on our 3rd episode. And oh my gosh, that was such a incredible fun episode. And we really got in depth into, I would say, like the science behind all the kind of theoretical stuff that we've been talking about. And he really lays it out for us in the form of Chinese medicine and kinesiology, and his absolute brilliant expertise hopefully sort of proved our point even more that there really is such a deep mind-body connection, but he goes into depth of how that actually works inside of the body. And so when you start seeing symptoms show up or pain show up, you can usually trace that back to an emotion in the body, and we get into all of those details. So like I said, check out those past episodes before you start getting into today's episode, because like I said, I think it would be really foundational for today's discussion. But for today, I want to give you some practical wisdom because yes, we've talked about this mind-body connection. Hopefully we have convinced you that this exists and that you're starting to up your level of awareness of your own body, hopefully starting to create some mindfulness around your body's sensations. Maybe you've done some of my guided meditations this month, which kind of helps you go deeper into this. And I want to help you really learn how to embrace this new knowledge on a day-to-day kind of level. And now we want to get into the how of getting back into the body. How do we actually anchor into the body? Because when we aren't aware of our body's needs, it's kind of hard to take care of it. You know, we might mistake our anxiety for hunger or dull our senses to physical pain. Like, how many times has that happened? I know for me, oftentimes it's like, God, I didn't even know I was in that much pain. I've just been living with it. So when we stay disconnected or disassociated from our body, we can't really make sure that we're giving ourselves what it is that we need in order to feel balanced and whole. And when we can't process our emotions, like when we don't even know what we're feeling, then we can't move those emotions through and out of our bodies. And then they get stored and they get stuck in the body. And so I want to kind of talk about, how do we do this? How do we anchor into the body and create kind of a practice so that we truly can be living a life where we are fully alive? And so now that we have some of this working knowledge from the previous episodes, let's implement this. So I want to read you this quote from this beautiful book called Yoga and the Quest for the True Self by Stephen Cope. He says, as we begin to re-experience a visceral reconnection with the needs of our bodies, there is a brand new capacity to warmly love the self. We experience a new quality of authenticity in our caring, which redirects our attention to our health, our diets, our energy, our time management. This enhanced care for the self arises spontaneously and naturally, not as a response to a should. We are able to experience an immediate and intrinsic pleasure in self-care. And I think that this is so true. When we start inhabiting the body, when we get back into our physical body, and we restore the relationship that we have with our bodies, there is this natural thing that happens that we want to begin to act in our own best interest. And as long as we are disconnected, disassociated, as long as we hate our bodies, as long as we see our bodies as the enemy, as long as we blame our bodies, it's very difficult to act in our own best interest. And so when we begin to come back into the body and restore this relationship, come to peace with the body, begin to develop and cultivate a relationship with the body, it's really amazing to see the enhancement of our own personal self-care. It's like they kind of go hand in hand because we start sensing the needs of our body. We start hearing the signals that our body is communicating to us way before it has to turn into some kind of a symptom or sickness where our body is having to scream at us or yell at us. It's like as we begin this relationship, we begin to become sensitive to the whispers of our bodies. And when I think about my body, first and foremost, I love to think of my body as a she. I love to think of my body sort of as its own person. And that's really helpful for me because when I talk about having a relationship with your body, I kind of have to have some sort of like mental visual for the representation of my physical body. And so I like to think of it as a her, that I am partnering with this amazing body. And it's been a strained relationship. I have been incredibly abusive to my body in the past. And there are times that I struggle with judgment and criticism, like every person. But I have come to a place in my relationship with my body that my body is on my team, that my body has a voice. It has a say-so in how I live my life. It gets a vote on how I show up in my day-to-day. And I want to make sure that I am nurturing and nourishing and prioritizing this relationship to my body. Not only because my body is my way that I get to live life, way that I experience life, but it's also, in addition to just like the physicality of it keeps me moving and it's like how I inhabit the world, it's also where all of those emotions lie. And knowing what I know and what we've talked about in the last 3 episodes about how the muscles, how the tissues, how the organs store unprocessed emotions, where then the body gets taxed and has to deal with it in a different way, then what happens is that I know that if I am cultivating a relationship with my body, I'm going to be able then, through my awareness, through these practices that I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to be able to move my emotions through my body so that they don't get stuck or stored kind of in a way of not dealing with them, at a way of denial. And I get to move on with my life. It's like a tool in my toolbox to move forward so that I don't stay stuck or stagnant or stay sick or develop issues. That really is, with these practices, a way of like moving forward through my life and processing kind of in real time what's going on. And to me, I've done so much therapy. I have done, I can't even tell you. I've probably had a dozen different therapists, which all serve their purpose. Like I am still in therapy today. I have a coach today. I love talking. I'm a very verbal person. I'm a verbal processor. But there is this unmistakable tool using our body that helps me process my emotions. It helps me process what is happening in my life more than therapy ever has. Like the anchoring of the body, getting into the physical body, is to me such a gateway. I'm going to share with you 3 practical exercises that you can use to enhance this relationship with your body. Hey y'all, I just wanted to interrupt this episode real quick to remind you to subscribe to this podcast. I know that emails get lost in your spam folder, so subscribing means my episodes come right to your phone. So go ahead, hit that quick little subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of the Living Fully Alive episodes. Plus, in addition to subscribing to the podcast, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. I don't know if you know this, but I have been releasing guided meditations every Monday over on YouTube, and you're not going to hear them here. So if you've been wanting to start an easy meditation practice, subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on my short 15-minute guided meditations. All right, now back to this week's episode. And so I like to think of this sort of like investing in a key relationship. Because you want to go, think about a relationship. You're going to want to go on dates, and you're going to want to keep a sense of playfulness as a part of the relationship. You want to be trying out new things. You're also going to want to make sure that you have great communication inside of a relationship. And you're also going to need the romance and the physical expression of your relationship. So these to me are 3 elements that kind of create this beautiful, balanced relationship. So we're going to take this idea and we're going to apply it to the relationship to our body. And this is how we're going to create 3 practical exercises to keep the relationship alive, so to speak. And you are welcome to implement all of these. I certainly have, but I didn't necessarily do it all at once. I think that sometimes we get overzealous and we get excited. We're like, yeah, like I'm going to do all the different things. And my method, I think, as I've done this work and as I've coached people through this process, what I've realized is that it's those small incremental changes over time that make the biggest difference. So even if you can take one of these 3 practical exercises with you and implement it and start it, and then you can add the second one or add the third one. But I would just say, as you're listening to this, kind of see which one of these 3 feels the easiest, the most intriguing, that where you have like the least amount of resistance with, and start with that. Because ultimately, you want to set yourself up for success. You want to choose something that feels kind of relatively easy. Like maybe it's not something that you are totally comfortable with because you haven't actually done it, but the idea is like, I have a little curiosity around that. So that's typically where I go when I'm starting to add in something to my life, to create change into my life. I want to look at what's going to be the easiest, what's going to be the path of least resistance to kind of create that movement forward, to create some momentum. And then as I've got that momentum, as I'm going, I can kind of add to it. And if we're thinking about this idea of really living fully alive, I truly believe that this relationship with our body has to become an essential part of that focus, the relationship with our body. So the first practical exercise is moving the body. Now, I know that seems maybe so simple, but I'm going to talk about my 2 favorite ways of moving my body as it relates to processing our life, processing stress, processing trauma, and processing emotions. But to me, Movement is the gateway to our emotions. Moving our bodies is really what helps to begin to release all of that trapped, stagnant energy, stored emotions, and moving the body helps to sort of flush them out. And I know that for me, rewind 7 years ago, oh my God, y'all, the thought of moving my body, I was like, there is no way. I was so resistant to it. I was at the point where I was resisting even the smallest kind of movement. I felt so locked and trapped in my body. And there was a lot of contributing issues and reasons why that was the case. I mean, I think that I went on lockdown because of a lot of trauma that I had in my body. And I also really wasn't taught how to move my body. Lindsley and I had talked a little bit about this in our conversation about embodiment, but just the idea of raising my arms or dancing, those weren't things that I really got a lot of practice in after kind of, really young childhood. And so that idea of moving my hips or even just the concept of exercise felt really threatening, really, really scary. And I think that this is a very common thing amongst people who've experienced any kind of physical abuse, sexual abuse. Anytime people have experienced chronic trauma, severe acute trauma, to people who have oftentimes had a lot of shame around their bodies due to religious input or, a parent or a teacher shaming their body. And so we've really learned how to disassociate from our body. So that's just really normal and really natural. And so I think the first piece of movement is understanding the resistance to it. And usually it's for protection. It's not because we're lazy. It's not because we don't have willpower or we're unmotivated. There is typically a deeper reason why we are not moving our bodies. And so when I think about moving the body, when we're talking about it from a relational standpoint and not a physical health standpoint, I think that's really helpful. So for me, I think about moving the body oftentimes as very separate from exercise. And I think that might be helpful because exercise to me is oftentimes motivated by shame. There is a desire for a result. There are conditions that make exercise kind of about the rules. You have to sweat. You got to go a certain amount of distance for it to count. There's a lot of baggage around exercise. So when we shift that and we think about moving the body, I often tell people that I'm working with who are kind of at a stage in their life where they haven't experienced any movement. I say, what would it look like to introduce what I like to call micro movement? Micro movement. So this isn't okay, you got to go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. Let's get you moving. That to me is too far of a stretch and oftentimes produces shame before we even set out to do it. And so to sort of remove ourselves from that trigger, it's really helpful to think about this, number one, as movement, to move emotion through and out the body, but also in terms of micro movement, meaning little ways of moving the body when typically you've been in a state of no movement. So to me, that looks like setting a little reminder on your phone to every couple hours, especially if you sit at a desk, to do some gentle neck circles, rolling the head around on the neck. Super easy. It's not exercise, but it's moving. It's moving that tension. It's moving that stress through the neck, through the throat area, opening up those meridian points, and a great way to release some tension several times through the day. Another kind of micro movement would be every once in a while just stretching the arms up overhead, clasping them together, And bending to one side, stretching the opposite side of the body, opening up the opposite side of the body, coming back to center, arms up, clasped together, and then going and stretching and bending on the opposite side, stretching the opposite part of the body. And just even doing that kind of back and forth a few times, that's a micro movement. Another micro movement could be walking down the block and coming right back. So it's not like a really intensive walk. It's not a hike. It's not a run. It's not a sprint. Micro movements, finding ways in your regular day to move your body. Oftentimes for me, it looks like, taking my leg and stretching it on the couch, standing up, putting one of my legs on the cushion and just bending over that leg while I'm watching TV or folding laundry or something super simple. But these kinds of micro movements, because the idea here is that the muscles, and this is a quote from The Body Can Heal Itself, the muscles store emotional memory. They did not create, produce, or move the emotions. It is through the muscle-mind connection that the emotions that are stored within the muscle fibers and fascia are able to be moved and released. The muscles do not have their own mind. The mind is the mind. The muscles simply store what the body has endured through its life. This is both great memories as well as traumatic memories. So when we think about moving the muscles, we're almost dislodging, we are dislodging these memories, these emotions. And so it's a way of creating some fluidity inside of the physical body and the emotional body and our energetic body. And so asking yourself sort of what forms of movement do you even enjoy? For me, when I recognize I don't want to do the gym, that is like off the table for me, then it was asking myself, okay, well, what do I enjoy? And you know what I found is that I really loved being outdoors. I love to hike. And there was this really gentle hike near my house that was probably about a mile long. And I started to do that gentle walk. I started to move towards the things that felt enjoyable to me. The things that maybe previously I would have said, hey, these don't count. This isn't hard enough. It isn't strenuous enough. It's not burning enough calories. And I sort of just tossed that paradigm, that way of thinking out the window. And I said, okay, if I'm to move my body intuitively, how do I want to move? What does my body want? What is my body asking for? And sort of understanding what you enjoy. And so again, this goal of movement is to connect with your body. It's a way that we can learn to kind of allow our bodies to tell us the story that it wants to tell us as we move through any kind of pain, any kind of discomfort that we're experiencing through the physical body. And so there is this beautiful book, and hopefully you've heard of it. If you haven't, I highly recommend getting it. It's called The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma by Bessel van der Kolk. And he talks about the scientific effect of trauma, of the physical body, and then how to use the body to move through trauma. He says, one of the clearest lessons from contemporary neuroscience is that our sense of ourselves is anchored in a vital connection with our bodies. We do not truly know ourselves unless we can feel and interpret our physical sensations. We need to act on these sensations, navigate them safely through life. And while numbing or compensatory sensation seeking may make life tolerable, the price you pay is that you lose awareness of what is going on inside your body. And with that, the sense of being fully, essentially alive. So to me, the body is the answer. When we can pay attention to what our body is saying, that connection, the physical sensations, that is when we can live fully alive. So if I were to boil movement down into two non-negotiables that I think that everybody should incorporate into their lives are walking and yoga. So for those of you who don't know, I am a certified Kundalini yoga instructor. And I actually, as I started this journey and really what brought me into my body and created this beautiful and oftentimes really hard healing journey that I've been on is yoga. And so at 240 pounds, my heaviest weight, is when I walked into my first yoga studio. And at that same weight is when I became a certified yoga instructor. It was one of the hardest years of my life going through that training. I ended up having shoulder surgery during the training, which was incredibly painful. And yet it is the thing that I keep coming back to. It is a gift that keeps on giving, and it is a tool that has helped me really anchor into my body. And what I love about yoga is that it's just so powerful because it helps to create this awareness. It cultivates this invitation of tuning back into the body's wisdom. And again, it's different than exercise because oftentimes with exercise, it can further our dysfunction with the body. It can be motivated from shame, self-hatred, self-abuse. But yoga, and I'm talking about like the restorative yoga, sort of those even just more spiritual types of yoga, not the gimmicky exercise program yoga, but like true yoga. Yoga promotes a real healthy relationship with our bodies. And Bessel van der Kolk, he says, in yoga, you focus your attention on your breathing and on your sensations moment to moment. You begin to notice the connection between your emotions and your body. You perhaps have anxiety about doing a pose. It actually throws you off balance. You begin to experiment with changing the way you feel. Will taking a deep breath relieve the tension in your shoulder? Will focusing on your exhalations produce a sense of calm? Simply noticing what you feel fosters emotional regulation. I'll say that again. Simply noticing what you feel fosters emotional regulation, and it helps you to stop trying to ignore what's going on inside of you. As I often tell my students, the two most important phrases in therapy, as in yoga, are notice that and what happens next. Once you start approaching your body with curiosity rather than with fear, everything shifts. So, y'all, simply put, yoga will help to bring us back into the present moment. It tunes us back into that connection between our bodies, our emotions. It gives us awareness as to what we're feeling, what we're processing. And it is a way to physically move our emotions through the body. Physically move them out. So it creates body awareness, body connection, and helps us to process our emotions much more powerfully than cognitively processing them. And then the second kind of non-negotiable would be, in my opinion, would be walking. Because this, if you think about it, it's so simple, right? But it's like walking creates movement forward. And with walking, just about, any body, minus a major, permanent disability, can do it. Walking really invites us to slow down and to foster our intuition. I like to think of walking really as a meditation. Once I sort of gave up this addiction to it needing to be exercise and shifting it into more of a meditative practice, oh my God, it was such a gift to me. It started to regulate my breathing. It creates and opens up space for creativity to flow through you. It helps to connect you with the concept of a larger world because it gets you out of your small spaces and gets you outside, outdoors. It just expands your mind, really. And so movement in general, whether it's micro movements, whether it is shaking your arms, whether it's dancing, whether it's moving of the hips, whether it's stretching, whether it's yoga or walking, it is such a powerful way to actually practically connect with your body, to move it. Now, the second practical exercise is journaling, y'all. Journaling with your body. Now, I love this one. This is something I've been practicing for a while, but journaling puts us in touch with our emotions. It's sort of like that pause to tap in with the thoughts that are happening, the sentences in our heads, the belief systems that we have. And it gives us a way to get that out, to externalize what's happening internally. And I love journaling. And there are so many different studies on the benefits of writing and the benefits of journaling. But to me, this is where we can learn to communicate with our body. Again, remembering if we are going to create healthy communication with any relationship, it starts with listening. It starts with hearing somebody, going, I hear you. And so we can do this with our bodies. It's a beautiful way to build trust with our body and to learn our body's unique language so that we, in time, can repair our relationship with our body. And so one way we do this is by allowing our bodies to talk. Now, hang with me because I know that sounds kind of weird, but it's a really powerful process. And so for me, what I experience is sometimes and I do this a lot with my guided meditations that you can find on YouTube, but sometimes when we're in a mindfulness meditation and we're kind of arbitrarily or sort of loosely asking our body, okay, well, what do you feel? Or what do you need? It's sometimes kind of hard to really hear what the body is saying. It's like there's not quite enough structure. It feels a little bit too loose. And what I have found, because we don't have a lot of practice with listening to our bodies and even identifying, oh, that's my body talking to me, or, oh, this is what it sounds like and this is what it's saying. A way to baby step that, which is it's a baby step, but it's a really powerful step, is to journal with your body. So years ago in therapy, I was doing a lot of journaling. And a lot of the journaling that I was doing was a dialogue between me and another part of myself. So that inner dialogue looked like talking to my inner child, the part of my inner child that was still wounded, the part of my inner child that was still scared, was still feeling shame, and creating that inner dialogue, creating that trust. And that's been immensely healing for my journey. And then oftentimes I've had these kind of back and forth conversations with God, like, God, I'm really scared. I'm really angry. I don't know how to lean in. I don't know how to surrender. I don't know how to trust. I'm scared you don't love me. And then hearing God's response, or your higher power, whatever that might look like. And so as I started doing this more and more and more, I got to the place where I started this dialogue between myself and my body, a conversation with my body. And so what it looks like is slowing down and setting a timer for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and making sure that your body knows that you're coming from a place of unconditional loving. So something I might do is I might start out writing and I'll say, hi, body, it's Mary. I want to create a conversation with you today. I want to hear what you have to say. And I just want you to know that I really appreciate you. Thank you for all the ways that you have, kept me alive and kept me breathing. Thank you for being so resilient. I just kind of start in a state of gratitude for all the ways in which my body has been an incredible teammate for my life. And then if I'm experiencing pain, if I'm experiencing emotional overwhelm, if I'm experiencing sickness or any kind of symptoms, I can tune in and ask my body, what are you trying to communicate? What are you trying to say? Body, what is it that you need? I'm here. I'm listening. And then, and oftentimes therapists will tell you to do this, to write with your opposite non-dominant hand and let your body speak. So allowing that part of yourself, your body's wisdom, speak to you and just write whatever comes to mind. So you're not filtering this. You're not criticizing it. You're not judging it. You're really trying to stay in a space of listening, of neutrality. So you're not going, oh, that's stupid, or oh, I'm not supposed to say that, or I should say something else. You're really in a receptive state, a passive state of just listening, staying in a state of curiosity, staying in a state of receptivity, of listening and hearing what it is that your body has to say to you. And then you can create a dialogue. You can literally go back and forth with your body. And you can say, I really hear you, body. I really hear that you're hurting. I really hear that this is painful. I really hear that you're sad. Is there anything else that you wish to tell me? And then you go with your other hand and allow your body to respond. And you just go back and forth. There's not really anything that has to come out of this, but the idea is that you're connecting in with a conversation to your body's voice. Because to me, oftentimes when a symptom shows up, it's like my body's trying to tell me something. It is communicating with me. And so that's when I pause, I grab my journal, I slow down to listen, and I engage in intimacy with my body. This is where we are developing and nurturing this relationship with our body. And it feels kind of silly at first. It feels kind of like awkward, but after a while and through time, you don't have to even journal it anymore. You can kind of like on the fly have this dialogue or look at yourself in the mirror in your own eyes and talk to your body. There's a lot of ways you can have these conversations with your body, but the more and more you do this, and that's why we call it a practice, because it really is something that you do over and over again, the easier it gets. The more receptive and you become, and you start to notice and pick up on subtle things that your body is saying. Subtle sensations, subtle emotions, subtle feelings, gut feelings, and you start to become very sensitive to how your body communicates so that you catch things before they turn into full-blown issues. It's really, really cool. So I encourage you to experiment with this. Try it a few times. That's a really powerful way to connect with the body. Now, the third practice, practical exercise, is touching your body. Now, I know that sounds also a little bit bizarre, but my coach recommended this to me. Gosh, it's probably been like 6 years now. But there are inevitably parts of your body that are either in a lot of pain or some kind of, imbalance, chemical imbalance or intestinal imbalance, for example. There's areas, I think, oftentimes that feel really numb, like you literally cannot feel the sensation. It's like they are cut off from sensation, like blank. Areas that are just blank. You can't feel it, just totally disassociated from. And then there's also areas that typically you judge the most, or that you hate the most, or that you have abused the most. And so lovingly touching your body is a way of restoring that relationship. And so it's super simple. I started doing this like before I went to bed. And for me, I hated my stomach. So living in a larger body, I obviously had weight around my midsection. And I got to the point where I would not even look at myself in the mirror. I didn't want to look at my belly. Certainly did not love my belly. I hated my belly. Any chance I could get, I would talk about how much I hated my belly, how it was gross, how it was disgusting. And this was internal self-talk. But man, I just berated my belly. And I also hated my arms. I thought they were too flabby and too gross and all the things. So part of this sort of restoring a relationship with my body and practically creating this body connection with myself was to lay a hand or two hands on the areas that I hated and to say, I see you, I hear you, please forgive me. Or, I love you, please forgive me. And the forgiveness was a big piece of this. Forgiving myself for the ways that I had abused myself, judged myself, criticized myself, blamed my body, all of these different things. And just by like laying hands on my physical body, it was a way of creating connection, a way of being able to tap in, to ask for forgiveness. And it's like just the willingness to touch areas that are in pain, areas that are areas that you've hated. It's like it brings that healing touch. It brings sort of that like mama bear, mother energy, loving energy, nurturing energy to the body. And it's a really beautiful way to nurture that relationship. That to me is the physical intimacy part of the relationship. You're willing to see your body. You're willing to touch your body. You're willing to offer your body healing energy. Oftentimes after I've said, I hear you, I see you, please forgive me, I'll imagine sending love and light to that area of the body. So in my imagination, it's almost like a meditative practice. I imagine myself having almost beams of light into my hands, shooting into the part of my body that is in pain or that is sick or that is experiencing some kind of imbalance or that I've just previously hated and berated, and sending in that love and light. Imagine flooding that area with so much love. Imagine flooding that area with so much light and seeing it becoming balanced, blessing that area of my body, and taking a time to just physically connect. So I think in those ways, it's just so beautiful. I mean, first and foremost, moving the body through yoga, through micro movements, through walking. And then second, creating a practice of journaling with your body, investing in that conversation, that dialogue. And then third, to really give yourself permission for touching the body, for physically connecting with the body, having a regular practice of that, a nightly practice of that could literally take you like 2 minutes. And as I always say, like, just be gentle. This is a relationship that is new in a lot of ways for most people. It's a relationship that probably needs a lot of healing. This is a practical practice of learning how to hear and partner with your body, to find ways to release that stored and trapped emotion and process what's happening in real time. And that's going to look different for all of us. It's going to look different for you than it looks for me. But for me, it's like, okay, I know that as I invest in my body and as I meet my body with more tenderness, with more loving, with more mindfulness and awareness, that I know that my life will look so different a year from now. And I've seen this. I've experienced this myself. I've walked my personal one-on-one coaching clients through this. It's amazing. When we all can pause to seek to listen, to hear, to forgive, to let our body feel the emotions that are coming up rather than trying to bury them or stuff them or press them down. When we have the present moment to hear what they have to say and work through that so they don't get stored in our muscles and the tissues of our body like scar tissue, feeling our way through life is so brave and so rewarding. And oftentimes it's kind of trading that short-term discomfort of the feeling that present pain that might be coming up or the present hurt that might be coming up. But in reality, it's going to save you from a lifetime of real pain, illness, and dis-ease. And the most amazing thing is that the body can come to balance itself. The body can heal itself. Miracles happen, whether that healing comes through faith, answered prayer, some kind of surgery or treatment. Your body, in my opinion, has to be part of that conversation in order for you to heal completely and move forward. Partnering with your body. And as you begin to deepen this relationship with your body and you listen to your muscles and you listen to your mind and you listen to your gut and you listen to your heart and you listen to your emotions, this is when you can also, through the body, access deeper joy, elation, pleasure, higher spiritual connection. There are so many incredible benefits that come from being in your body, having this body connection. It is just such a powerful healing tool. And to me, really is a way for us to live fully alive. So there you go. We have concluded this conversation of this month's topic of body connection. I hope that you feel inspired and you have some practical tools to take home to try out immediately and begin to anchor into the body. All right, guys, I'm excited to be with you next month for our brand new topic. Stay tuned for what that is next week on our first episode. And until then, remember, the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. I'll see y'all next week. Bye. If you loved today's episode, make sure to share it with your girlfriends and invite them into the conversation of this month's topic of body connection. And if you want to keep the discovery journey going of living more fully alive, check out all my past episodes from this podcast over at maryhyatt.com/show. Plus, you'll be able to grab the show notes for this episode along with the essential oil recipe of the month. Again, that's maryhyatt.com/show. All right, y'all. See you next week.